Smart coming through that corner. Track now in the Cooper Tires USF 2000 Championship, the very first rung of the Road to Indy presented by Cooper Tires. And again, as we go live, we say hello to those of you who are tuning in on the Road to Indy app on your mobile device. A number of ways to be able to follow the action. You can go to roadtoindy.tv. Each of the series has their own website. This one, of course, usf2000.com. There's a live component there to be able to tune in and watch the live play-by-play, live video, of course, the audio and live timing. But again, these drivers having to get on what is a very tough racetrack. And Eric and I talked about it earlier today when they were on track this morning at 8 o'clock in the morning for their practice session. For so many of these drivers who come up through the karting ranks or maybe through the Lucas Oil School of Racing, their Formula Car Series or one of the Formula 1600 Series in the U.S. and Canada, whatever it may be, F4, coming into this ladder program, they don't get a chance to test here. So the 5 sessions, so tough, 4 miles in length, 14 different corners, high-speed corners, slow speed, a lot of hard braking as well. And it takes these drivers a little time to get up to speed. And interestingly, the driver who ended up having the fast lap right at the very end of the session was actually Hunter McElroy, a driver who has never been here before. But McElroy, as we have talked, a very impressive young Kiwi. McElroy winning the Mazda USF 2000 $200,000 scholarship last year in Arizona. Took that scholarship to Pabst Racing, the shop and team that is so connected with Road America, the team based out of nearby Dousman. Pabst's name, of course, forever linked with the Road America circuit. Augie Pabst III, the third generation Pabst running the program. Pabst Racing won the team championship last year. 4 very talented drivers here again this year as well. Yuvan Sundaramurthy, Hunter McElroy, Colin Kaminsky, and Bruna Tomaselli, the only young lady in our Road to Indy this year. McElroy was quickest, as I said, at 2:10.782. But again, in talking to both he and P2 runner Colin Kaminsky, not a ton of grip. Even though the Radical Cup guys were out on the racetrack all day on Thursday, it's different rubber. Now that the IndyCar drivers have come out, they've laid the rubber down in the corners, and that's going to give these guys a lot more grip. Now, remember, it's obviously a different rubber. We use Cooper tires, the IndyCar program on the Firestone, so the drivers have to adapt to the different rubber that's connecting on the racetrack. But these Coopers in the warmer temperatures as well should be able to grip nicely. 20-minute session, so the drivers have to get the job done quickly. I don't know whether or not we're going to see any of the drivers make runs into pit lane. No tire carryover this particular weekend as well. Normally, we'll carry over a tire from the event beforehand. So, obviously, we're not carrying over the tire from Lucas Oil Raceway. The last race for USF 2000 and Indy Pro 2000 was at Lucas Oil on the 5/8 mile banked oval, so we're not using those tires. Same goes for the drivers in Indy Lights from the Freedom 100. So the tires that they will carry over from the road course event in mid-May at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway will not be used until, at least for Indy Lights, will not be used until Toronto. I believe these drivers here in USF 2000 may have been able to use a carryover, but a different tire compound and construction for Indy Lights in the Cooper tires, so they'll wait for Toronto to use that carryover set from Indianapolis. One of the things about qualifying, especially a 20-minute session here at Road America with a lap time of over 2 minutes, we got to bide our time and be patient before we see anything quick because, of course, the first time they get out and get around, that's really only the sighting lap. They haven't even been around a full time. Then they finally come back around that first lap. Best out lap, a 2:11.334. Just to set you up here in terms of track record time, we want to make sure we laid that down for you. That was actually last year. The young Swede Rasmus Lint ran with Pabst Racing last year at 2:09.2. We were a second and a half off of that this morning. I think it was about 62, 63 degrees from the driver's trip to the racetrack at 8 a.m. It's going to be significantly warmer now, but again, it was only set to go up to about 70 degrees. A gorgeous day so far. 72 degrees, so about a 10-degree difference, and it'll be more than that, the track temperature itself. That's going to play well to the grip levels in these Cooper tires. In talking to Colin Kaminsky, we kind of chatted a bit about just how quick you can go through the carousel. Last year, he said, in perfect temperature, perfect conditions, you were flat through the carousel, which I think is unbelievable with these guys. Here, about 80%. They're kind of feathering it. They can't quite go to full throttle. They rear end to want to step out on you, so it's just trying to keep as much grip down as possible. But even as Eric had said, one of the key things about this racetrack, so many different corners where you have to be good, and some of them I think potentially people don't understand, and Eric detailed it perfectly. The braking zone into turn number 5 is important. Getting down out of turn 14, out of turn 1, but it's that corner 8, getting down into the hurry downs into turn number 8 where you got to get on the brakes and get back on the throttle, get the car to rotate, because essentially you start the straightaway heading down to Canada Corner in turn number 8.
Well, we talked a little bit about that earlier this morning as well, Rob. In turn 8, it's one of those corners where it's a passing opportunity, but a lot of times you don't want to necessarily make a pass there. You want to make a clean entrance to the apex and a clean exit to the apex. It's more about keeping that momentum. So it's sometimes you actually have to be – patience is the better part of valor,
Agreed.
right? So you have to be a little bit more patient exiting turn 8 just because of how much momentum that you need to carry into the carousel, and then again through the carousel and off into the kink, and then certainly Kettle Bottoms into Canada Corner, which is the better passing opportunity than turn 8. So you kind of have to mind the minions, so to speak, inside your 6 inches. Kind of determine, when am I going to make this move from a passing standpoint? Here in practice and qualifying, practice this morning, qualifying right now it's about finding the ultimate lap time. So every single corner, you're trying to maximize every entrance, every exit. But when you get into racecraft, that's really where these drivers are going to learn that best here at Road America, because there's so many opportunities for passing, but not every opportunity for passing is a critical opportunity.
And that's, you said, do you pass in turn number 8 because you're going to lose that run down? Getting past in turn 8 is really bad, because if you get past in turn 8, you've totally lost that run into turn number 8. The guys behind you are able to get the full run, really tighten things up when they get back down to Canada Corner. All right, let's have a look now. Drivers with pretty much two laps, and almost everybody with 2 circuits in, a 2:10.909, right around where we were at the end of the session this morning. Alex Barron leading the way in the number 14 for Legacy Autosport. He quickly gets dropped by both Colin Kaminsky and Hunter McElroy. The Kiwi McElroy now out of New Zealand in the number 22 machine, a 2:10.297, 0.3 of a second off what would be a track record time in USF 2000. So McElroy leads the way on lap number 2. Colin Kaminsky second. Pabst Racing first and second. Christian Rasmussen, the Dane, in the number 6 for J. Howard Driver Development, now to P3. Barron drops into 4th. Matt Round Garrido, the British driver, moving over to BN Racing here this weekend alongside Anthony Famularo. He moves up to P5. Cameron Shields now into 6th, the most recent winner, scoring the victory on the oval at Lucas Oil Raceway. Shields in the 73 for Newman Walks Racing, now 6th. Jack Crawford, the young 14-year-old out of Houston, Texas for D-Force Racing in the 52. He's P7. Point leader Braden Eves back in the 8th spot. He was 9th today. He has just not been able to find the speed thus far. 9th this morning. He's now 8th. Second generation Eduardo Barrichello now in the 9th spot for Miller Vinatieri Racing. And then Darren Keene currently 3rd in points for Cape Motorsports in that 10th spot. Nolan Siegel 11th. Sundar Murli was 12th, dropped now to 13th by his teammate Bruno Tomaselli. So that's the other 2 Pabst drivers, 12th and 13th. Manuel Suleiman in 14th, Reese Gold 15th, Jack Miller 16th, and that's Christian Bogle and Famularo. 18 drivers in the field. Everyone just kind of dialing things in still. Famularo, Bogle, Miller really haven't laid down competitive times as of yet.
Yeah. Even Sundar Muthi as well as Matt Rangarito, both of them turning some laps here last weekend here during the June sprints. No stranger to Road America, Alex Barron lives about 30 minutes south of here in Port Washington, Wisconsin. So great to see Barron here at Road America as well, but he's certainly no stranger to the circuit and running laps around here.
110.2 up top for McElroy, 110.2 10.2975 was his fast lap. Kaminsky goes quicker. Colin Kaminsky now going to try to challenge his teammate for that pole position, the extra bonus point that comes with it. Colin Kaminsky from Chicago, Illinois, in the number 23, the Slick Lock-sponsored Tatis USF 17. Barron back to second. You know, I always think that qualifying's underrated. I find it thrilling to see how these drivers are able to lay times down. And when you talk to the engineers, talk to the drivers, it's all about taking care of the tires as the fuel starts to run down. The car gets a little bit lighter. You want to make sure the tire pressures are coming up at the right time. Drivers need to make sure they maintain the gap around them so they're not getting caught up by anybody else, not getting any aero wash through the quicker corners. It's a really kind of a chess match to be able to put it all together to try to find a good qualifying lap.
Well, not only that, but I think you've got a little bit of a strategic standpoint as well with the qualifying session. Now, we haven't had, knock on wood, many offs throughout the last couple of sessions here, but you've got to get a banker in early.
Agreed.
You can't just simply putt around in the first couple of minutes of qualifying, because you need to get at least a decent banker in just in case you happen to get a late session yellow or red.
And only 20 minutes long.
And being 20 minutes long, you've got to go. You've got to get on the loud pedal and go.
Yeah. One major incident where two cars get together, potentially, and you've got a long cleanup. And we've seen that happen before, too. We've seen guys wait in pit lane, maybe not wait out the first 5 minutes of a session. Well, all of a sudden, you're rolling out there. You're just getting up to speed. We're 10 minutes in, and there's a wreck. And all of a sudden, we're closed down for 6, 7, 8 minutes. And you get maybe one lap. We've seen guys qualify middle of the pack that should have been up front because they didn't put down that banker lap, as you talked about.
Yeah, Kaminsky certainly, though, got his banker in early, as did Alex Barron, a 2:10.267. Barron, a 2:10.292.
Look at the gap between first, second, and third.
2:47.
Keep going back.
So you're into the fourth digit now, how close that is. So,
three hundredths of a second separating first, second, and third. And that's a couple of drivers from Pabst Racing. Alex Barron, the lone driver this weekend at Legacy Autosport. Darren Keene and the Cape Motorsports Machines jumped to fourth. Manuel Suleiman in fifth for D-Force Racing. Then Jay Howard's team. And then it's Barrichello for Miller Vinatieri Motorsports. Then Sundar Murthy, Tomaselli, and Matt Rangarito for BN Racing. So there's 5 or 6 teams in the top 10 right now. But a couple of good laps there for Sundar Murthy and Tomaselli. They were, I want to say, 11th and 12th or 12th and 13th, just a lap ago.
So you've got Kaminsky on top of the board at a 10.267. Barron a 10.292. A 10.297. A 10.686. A 10.773. That's your top 5, separated by less than 5/10. Incredibly close competition here in the Cooper Tires USF 2000 Championship.
Yeah, still, I'd said 2:09.9 was track record. 2:09.2. They're a full second off the track record, still held by Rasmus Lint last year. The temperatures were significantly higher, I believe, last year. A lot of grip on the track as well. Still another qualifying session to come, though, tomorrow for these drivers. Again, this is qualifying for race number 1. Drivers, of course, with 2 races. They'll be on track at noon tomorrow. Race number 1 for USF 2000. 12:55 for Indy Pro and 1:50 for Indy Lights. The first races through the ladder, through the 3 series lineup on Saturday. The rest of the races, the final 3 of the doubleheaders, will go on Sunday morning ahead of the IndyCar race. No motion here right now as we're in lap number 4 and 5. Again, a 2:10.267 fast lap for Colin Kaminsky. 300 separating your top 3 drivers. Let's see if anybody can throw a lap in here, a flyer, with the fuel loads going down a little bit. Watching the big screen there, Eric, a little bit interesting. One of the drivers, one of the D-Force drivers, I believe, coming down into the hurry downs of turn number 8. And every time I've driven here, that for me, that corner, because you carry so much speed coming out of turn number 7, you're rolling the speed there. It's a lot more open than it seems when you're behind the wheel. It almost seems like it's kind of a 90-degree corner along 90, but it's not at all. It's kind of more of a 45. And you roll so much speed down into turn number 8, and you really you have to get the car rotated and back on power early.
Well, one of the things that, we talk about turn 8 being a little underrated, but that's 6, 7, 8, really those 3 corners, that complex itself, you got to get a good run out of 6. You've got a very tight, blind at 6. You tend to run a little bit wide of the racetrack, kind of wide off of apex exit at 6, but you have to do that because you're maximizing the turn back to the right. So you've got to go right to go left to get back into 7.
That's it. Yep.
And 7's not a fully committed corner, but you're almost there with these cars. You're almost flat footing
Agreed.
through 7. And all of that momentum, again, out of 6, feeds 7, and it feeds your rhythm and momentum out of 8, and then feeds the backstretch.
Yeah, agreed.
We talk a lot about Road America doesn't have a lot of tight corners. There's some, I would say medium level speed corners. Turn 5, obviously one of the slowest corners on the racetrack. But you look at this racetrack, we key in on this time and time again of how much rhythm it takes to be fast here, and that rhythm has to be consistent.
I like how all the corners are so kind of, I call them linked, almost interconnected, where, as you said, you got to be so good through 6 even to be good down in turn number 8. Now, time winding down, this is interesting. Let's have a look at this. A shorter 20-minute session, 3.5 minutes, less than 3.5 minutes remaining. A number of drivers have already come to the pits. You have to believe that they're done. Like, there's no way you're going to come in, make a little change, and go back out at this time with just that little amount of time going. Sundar Murthy's into pit lane. He's in 8th. Braden Eves, your point leader, outside the top 10 right now. Braden, who won the first 4 races in a row, P11 in the number 8 machine. The driver out of Ohio at 211.239, almost a full second back in that number 8. This really changes things in the championship. He has a massive lead right now, but still, you don't want to give up any points when you're in that position. Just keep chipping away, adding the points so that you take some pressure off by the time you get to the finale at Laguna Seca in September. But right now, up front, Colin Kaminsky in the number 23. How would he ever love to get his second career pole and second consecutive pole? He was on the pole at the Oval as well, but chased by his teammate Hunter McElroy, by the veteran driver Alex Barron. Darren Keene as well. Still has not done a full season in USF 2000. 2 shorter seasons, both in 2017 and 2018. Didn't run the final race of the year at Portland.
Talk about Braden Eves, stuck in that 11th position right now. You know how valuable starting position is here at Road America, just simply because of it's a track you can pass on. There's no question. We've seen drivers go from 6th to 1st pretty quickly. When they're fast in that situation, but middle of the pack, you're just opening yourself up for problem opportunities.
You're right when you were saying that. My mind was, the chaos is never in 1st and 2nd. The chaos is like 5th, 6th.
3rd, 4th, 5th row on the start.
Exactly.
You're just being in the middle of the field. You just open yourself up to somebody behind you trying to get forward faster than you're waiting to go through the corner, and vice versa. If there's a problem in front of you, can you get stopped in time? It's opening yourself up to the chaos of what everybody else does around you. Now, you got to worry about yourself, but in the back of your mind, you know that I'm in the middle of the pack, and anything can happen right now.
And 3 corners at this racetrack to start that lap. Turn 1, wide, everybody going deep. Down the hill to turn number 3. Again, people trying to make that move to the bottom. And then, of course, turn number 5. Always an opportunity to pass in 5, and so you open the door, as you said.
You tend to find that most people are calm, cool, collected through 1. Everybody minds their P's and Q's. Turn 3 starts to get a little dicey, but that first lap into turn 5, it's game on.
Yeah, agreed. Well, we're into the final 45 seconds. Colin Kaminsky looking pretty good here right now. Alex Barron has already headed to the pit lane in the Legacy Autosport number 14. So he is done. He'll stand on a 210.292. He will not take the pole away from Kaminsky, but the young driver out of Chicago, Illinois, looking to grab his second consecutive USF 2000 pole position. He's across the line, 22 seconds still to go. Does not go any quicker, a 2:13. Let's see if Kaminsky pulls into pit lane. There goes by the number 2 of Darren Keene. No. Well, maybe not Kaminsky. Let's see if he's coming in. McElroy continues on. No, there's Kaminsky as well. So everybody trying for one more.
And they just got in, just barely past the alternate timeline over in turn 14.
And look at McElroy's time. His best at 2:10.29. He just did a 2:10.30. He's still on pace when a lot of the other drivers ticking back a little bit to 11s and 12s. McElroy potentially still on a flyer. Remember, final lap of our practice this morning, he was able to throw one down and steal the top time away from Kaminsky. Can he do it again? Will it be a carbon copy here for Hunter McElroy? Manuel Suleiman into pit lane for D-Force. That's P5 for the Mexican. Cameron Shields holding on to 6th. Rasmussen 7th. Barrichello 8th. Sundar Murthy and Tomaselli now 9th and 10th. McElroy, though, still on the racetrack. Hunter McElroy in the number 22. Can he go back-to-back in the practice and qualifying and steal the top time away in the final circuit?
A couple of cars still out on the back half of the course right now.
We're waiting. Again, a 110.302 last time by for McElroy. He'll have to find about 0.7 of a second if he wants to move Kaminsky back down. Final circuit. Everyone pulling into pits after they come by the stripe out there in between turns 13 and 14. Here they come now through into Canada Corner.
The only advantage of having the alternate timeline down in turn 14 is you get that possible last chance, last second effort to try to just get through. Five cars on the track.
Here they come, and that's both McElroy and I want to say Kaminsky's right behind him. McElroy may be off the throttle. I think he is.
Yeah, McElroy looks like out of 12, just kind of let everybody go.
So give it to Colin Kaminsky. Unless Darren King can do it, he does not. Colin Kaminsky, back-to-back jacks. He goes pole position at Lucas Oil Raceway on the oval, the shortest racetrack of the season. And then he does it here at the longest racetrack as well, the 4.1-mile Road America. Colin Kaminsky from Pabst Racing on the pole position once again. He'll be a happy man. 210.267 fast lap for Kaminsky. Alex Barron ends up P2, back by just 0.02 of a second, and not even another 100th back, 6,000th back of Barron is Hunter McElroy. He ends up in P3. Darren Keane for Cape Motorsports holding on to that 4th spot. Manuel Suleiman in 5th. Cameron Shields for Newman Walks Racing in 6th. Rasmussen 7th. Eves able to go up to 8th. That was an improvement. His final lap was the best, a 210.881. Gets to within 0.6 of a second. Barrichello in 9th spot, Sundar Murthy in 10th. Look at this, though. That's what I like. So, in the top 10 for USF 2000, how many teams? Kaminsky with Pabst, he and McElroy, and Sundar Murthy all Pabst. Then we've got Legacy in 2nd. We've got Cape in 4th. So, we're up to 3 teams. We've got 4 teams with D-Force Racing in 5th. Newman Walks Racing in 6th. 7th is Jay Howard. And 9th for Barrichello is Miller Vinatieri Motorsports. Is that 6 or 7? 7 different teams in the top 10. Of course, Pabst Racing with 3 drivers, Kaminsky, McElroy, and Sundar Murthy. But that's just the kind of parity we have in this program right now. This USF 2000 car, this Tatis USF 17, such a great car. Elite engine, Steve and Logan Knapp and the whole team, Tyler. Man, they do a great job with the power plants. We just have no issues whatsoever, and that's why we're able to give these kids so much great track time. But I'll tell you, to be able to get a hold of this racetrack, Hunter McElroy's done a good job so far. But the guy who's been here before, done a lot of laps here, started his career in 2015 at Spec Racer Ford, but looking good here in USF 2000. The pole goes to number 23, Colin Kaminsky.
Braden Eves, though, picked up nearly a second and a half to go from P11 to P8. So, we were kind of talking about him, being kind of mired in the middle of the field a little bit, able to gather it up and really put in a solid lap at a 210.881 for Braden Eves. So 8th isn't much better than 11th, but it's still 4 spots up.
Yeah, a couple of guys were able to go the quickest in the final circuit. You mentioned number 1, Braden Eves, and number 2, Cameron Shields. He did a 210.835 on the final circuit as well. And look at that little grouping between 6th, 7th, and 8th. An 210.835, an 860, and an 881. So, 0.03 of a second separating 6th, 7th, and 8th. This race is going to be fantastic, and maybe Braden Eves took himself maybe to the front of the chaos, a little chaos window. We talked about him being at 11th at one point. 8th, much better. I'll put him on the outside of row number 4 alongside Christian Rasmussen.
Well, that's going to wrap up qualifying for USF 2000. Up next on the docket is Indy Pro 2000 Q1 coming up at the 140 mark. So about 10 minutes away from right now, we will go qualifying again, and we'll make sure that we duct tape Rob Howden in the PA booth so he can at least keep sitting down, because we know that for the next 2 days you're going to be running around with pre-race and race calls, and this is always I like to call it the ladder circus, because watching you running around is pretty spectacular.
Yeah, I'm sure you guys play circus music when I'm up here.
It's pretty impressive to see you running around like that.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I call it the Road to Indy weight loss program, knocking the steps out here at Road America. But always a pleasure to be here. Again, the food's fantastic. Love having the brats. The hospitality in the entire area is amazing. As you know, Eric, so many different series come in here. I'm sure you hear it a lot. always a pleasure to be here. The staff here, I absolutely love working with you as well. It's one of the favorite venues, favorite locations, destinations for any of the drivers on the road, Danny.
Absolutely.
It's a gorgeous South Florida morning here at the Palm Beach International Raceway. The perfect setting to test out the new Cooper Zeon RS3 G1 tires.
It's a pretty brave move to put these tires on straight-up race cars.
Racetrack is the perfect scenario for this particular tire.
All day they were great, super predictable on the breakaway.
The tires, they seem like they have a lot of grip. You'll get a lot of use out of the tires.
Road to Indy 101.
Welcome to another episode of Road to Indy 101. This weekend we're at COTA. We're going to give you a behind-the-scenes look of Indy Lights Tech. We're here in the garages at COTA with Indy Lights Technical Director Craig Brooks. Standing in front of the Indy Lights setup pad, today Craig's going to give us a behind-the-scenes tour of what goes on in tech. Craig, why don't you give us a basic overview of what it is that you guys do here?
Well, basically you're standing in front of the tech pad. The cars roll up on here. The black pads you see here will come up after we put what we call pucks on the bottom of the tub. Car rolls up, we get a weight, the scales drop down, then we measure everything off of this flat surface.
What is the total weight for the car and driver for this series?
Depends, it's right around 1,400.
So what are some examples of things that you're looking for that teams might be doing that would be out of the regulations?
Things we check are like wing angles, wing heights, floor heights, what we call deflection, so much weight on the wings, they can only deflect so much, just general things like that.
Right. So Craig, what kind of technology do you guys use here at Tech to manage your process?
We use RevTech technology software, really cool software. All the Indy Lights techs around the pad, we have one in the front, one in the back, one on each side. They all have iPads. Mm-hmm. So we have cut down the communication gap a ton. We don't really even have to talk in here. Everybody sees what everybody else is doing, and as they're putting it in on their iPad, it comes up on my screen.
So it's all about efficiency here at Tech.
Absolutely, yep.
Between you, me, and the viewers, how good are the teams here at the Indy Lights paddock? Do you catch them cheating a lot?
No, not at all. And when somebody does fail or something like that, it's usually just a mistake. These guys are really professional. They know what they're doing. They know what's at stake. So we really don't have a lot of trouble.
Thanks for this behind-the-scenes tour of Indy Lights Tech, Craig. We'll see you at the next event in Indy.
Yeah, my pleasure. Glad to help.
Hi, I'm Toby Sarry from Cambridge in the United Kingdom, and I'm racing the number 2 BM Pelfrey Indy Lights car. I'm from St Neots, just outside of Cambridge in the United Kingdom. I grew up in a place called Melbourne, which is about 20 minutes away, so still fairly local. And yeah, I'm out here racing the Indy Lights. The way I got into racing was just primarily for fun. It happened to be a karting party when I was maybe 6 or 7 years old. So it wasn't anything like put in, follow my father's footsteps at a young age sort of deal, just purely for the love of the sport. In the UK, I do instructing work, so I work for MSV, which run half of the tracks in the UK as an instructor. So if someone wants to learn how to drive, I sit next to them and teach them and try and bring them on. And also do some mechanic work for karting teams that I used to race with. You know, I'm still very heavily involved in motorsports outside of my own racing, just purely for the love of the sport. So outside of racing, I hang around with a small group of friends that I have. Obviously racing travels a lot, so having some local friends is difficult, but you know, I've got some very good racing friends locally that I, you know, play some pool with, go to the pub occasionally, not too much, being a racing driver, but yeah, so it's, you know, a very chilled atmosphere outside of the racing. You know, take your mind away from the serious sports side and just let your hair down a bit. I'm looking forward to Road America again. Obviously, we had a very good result last year, so I think going back in a slightly quicker car is going to be a new challenge. But obviously this weekend, you know, being an F1 circuit as well, it's always something that you look forward to, and it's a great facility, and you know, the atmosphere so far is incredible. Follow me on the road to Indy. You can follow me on social media on Instagram at Toby Sowery and at Twitter on Toby Sowery Racing.
It's a gorgeous South Florida morning here at the Palm Beach International Raceway. The perfect setting to test out the new Cooper Xeon RS3 G1 tires.
It's a pretty brave move to put these tires on straight up race cars.
The race truck is the perfect scenario for this particular tire.
All day they were great, super predictable on the breakaway.
The tires, they seem like they have a lot of grip. You'll get a lot of use out of the tires.
Scott across the Arbrooks. Huge wreck. Wonder where we got some of the photos. Guys like Tony Kanaan and Oriol Servia and Elio Castroneves, they were photos from a little further back, let's put it that way. Some more recent, like the guys like a Piggott or some of the younger drivers. Of course, Colton Herta as well, a little more recent than some of the others. But it's where it all starts. There's just a fantastic club here that runs over the SeaTech Manufacturing Motorplex, a great racetrack, and really, I think probably one of the most unique karting tracks in North America, because the unbelievable elevation of where it is located on the side of the hill, on the other side of 6 by 7 and then down to 8. That's a great racetrack. I love it there.
Well, not only that, but you mentioned Colton Herta. What a breakout race that he had here at Road America, and has led to his first career win, of course, in the IndyCar Series. But again, this ladder program is so instrumental. But that karting step, coming up, just as instrumental. He ran,
in Southern California, did a lot of great racing as he was coming through the ranks. He actually jumped into what's called the SuperKarts USA Pro Tour. That was kind of it still is the biggest national series that runs throughout the country. So many great drivers have run SuperKarts USA, whether it's the Super Nationals in Las Vegas every year. Colton was one of the top drivers, won the championship with the cadet class. I think he was about 10 years of age or something like that. And then when you fast forward and watch him do what he did, he went car racing, did some Skip Barber, jumped into USF 2000 at one point, and then did a couple of years over in Europe with Carlin and a couple other teams. And now we get him back here. He learns a lot, makes the mistakes you're supposed to make, and figures it out. And we've seen him win already in the NTT IndyCar Series, and had a great run going at Texas before the incident with Scott Dixon. There's a lot of talent there, and there'll be more breakout races for Colton Herta.
And so young, still learning.
We laughed about the Indy 500. If he were to have won the Indy 500 this year, would be, of course, going to be the youngest driver ever to win the 500. He's got 4 years to win the 500 and still be the youngest guy ever. That's how young he is right now. So,
but that just shows how much talent that he's developed, and very quickly. And I'm sure Brian, certainly is kind of steering him in the right direction.
Yeah. It'll be patience. It'll be maturity. It'll be the way to handle certain situations. That's what he'll continue to develop in his opening year here in the NTT IndyCar Series. I did get some information. We did have an incident late in the run with a driver off the racetrack a couple times. We had a couple drivers that got some penalties, both the number 2 of Stingray Robb and the number 8 Parker Thompson being held until all the cars went out, and Daniel Frost as well in the number 68 for Exclusive Autosport being held for the first 5 minutes of this session. Those drivers did not slow down enough for the yellow flag, so that was the penalty that they were given. Having to, again, as I said, hold off a little bit before we go racing, before we go on track here. So as you can see from the timing, Stingray Robb, Parker Thompson, and Daniel Frost have still not yet laid down their first lap. In fact, Daniel Frost, I expect, will still be on pit lane because we're not even to the 5-minute mark yet. We're doing that just in the next 5 seconds. So 5 minutes down, 15 minutes still to go. Now let me grab my notes here because I want to make sure I get this right, because I went and talked to Nikita, and it's Lastishkin with an emphasis on the La. Nikita Lastishkin. I'm going to make sure I get this right. I practiced it for about 15 minutes. It'll take you a little bit longer, I would expect.
Yeah.
Nikita Lastishkin. Lastishkin leading the way right now for Exclusive Autosports at the number 90. He was strong. Lastishkin, again, living now in Los Angeles, born in Russia, has done his time in USF 2000 and in the Indy Pro 2000 category. Second year here on the second rung of the Road Dandy presented by Cooper Tires. A 2:03.297 fast time for Lastishkin to get things underway. Kyle Kirkwood up into second. He was the fastest driver. He went to the top of the charts in the RP Motorsports Racing entry. I talked to him during the Indy Lights race on IndyCar Radio, and Kyle pretty happy with the way the car was, but he was adamant that there was a lot of stuff that he wanted to change still. They had good speed, but there was a part of the balance he wanted to work on a little. So expect Kirkwood to continue to find speed here. Let's just say this right now. Rasmus Lintz got 2 laps in, so he has 4 laps so far because he went out 2 laps into the practice session this morning and missed that valuable track time this morning here at Road America.
You know, it doesn't seem like a long time when it's only a 10, 15, 20-minute session, but just losing 2 or 3 laps can be a world of difference, especially when you're trying to dial in the car.
And I think the interesting thing was I said the same thing to Kyle Kirkwood. I said, you know, Kyle, you ran here last year. You know the racetrack. How did it feel? And he said, the thing is, this car it's 10 seconds faster than the USF 2000 car. And he said, Rob, that really, the effect of that was more than I expected it was going to be. The thing, you just drive it, because the brakes are so much more aggressive, you drive it so much deeper into the corner, you carry so much more speed. And in fact, in talking to Steve Knapp, who built the engines, at this particular racetrack, Road America, and at Indianapolis Motor Speedway with the long straightaways, Hallman Boulevard, and of course coming all the way down the front straightaway in the clockwise direction at IMS, they run an alternate top gear. They run a different gear ratio that gives them about 300 more RPM. And at this racetrack, this is how fast they're going. Even with the alternate gear, if they're in the draft, they're bouncing off the rev limiter all the way up the straightaway. That's how quick these cars accelerate out of the corners. Kirkwood, not surprisingly, has moved his way to the top of the charts as I expected. The young driver from Jupiter, Florida, the reigning USF 2000 champion, 201.758. Kirkwood resetting the single-season victory record in USF 2000, 13 wins, I believe. Kirkwood, the number 28 now with RP Motorsports Racing. The Soul Red Mazda has that scholarship from Mazda to move on. Parker Thompson now up to second. I think this is probably one of the most interesting stories of the weekend. And we've talked about Parker Thompson this morning. If you were up with us and having your morning coffee, Parker started the season off on the right foot, winning both races at St. Petersburg. Here's a young guy that everybody's been watching. A couple years in USF 2000, almost won the championship in 2017. You know, 2016. Fast forward to 2017, he joins Exclusive Autosport to help them develop their car and develop their setup sheet. He won some races, but came up short in the championship there as well. Last year, moved to the Pro Mazda category, which is essentially Indy Pro 2000. Again with Exclusive Autosport. Again, let's get a brand new race car, the PM18. Let's have Parker run it and try to give us the information we need. Won races. Was looking to try to win a championship again, battling with Rinus VeeKay, and an incident, of course, takes him out of Toronto and kind of puts him on the back foot. Again, this year didn't really have an opportunity to race. The money wasn't there, but coming up with a program with Able Motorsports to, again, a brand new team with a new car to provide them with more data. They came out of the box strong and won at St. Petersburg, but struggled on the road course at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. He fought back to a couple of well-deserved fifth-place finishes to salvage the points. We thought he was going to maybe storm to the championship after the domination in St. Petersburg. Then he struggled again on the oval. He needs a good bounce-back weekend right now for Parker Thompson.
Absolutely. And again, we talked about earlier how it was very easy to kind of dial yourself out, you know, by trying new things.
Yeah, they had to try something.
Sometimes you got to try something new, but at the same time, you kind of got to go with what you know. And that it's hard to do with the new platform and you know, being more of not necessarily an experimental situation, but they're learning from an engineering standpoint. They don't necessarily know what this car is going to do yet,
and that's
what it's capable of.
It was almost, like you said, it's almost an experimental situation. We're going into every racetrack. You go from the bumpy racetrack of St. Petersburg to that glass smooth track at Indianapolis Motor Speedway. You think about the way you're approaching the dampers and the suspension and the overall, mechanical grip, and it was that much different. They were off. Now, the cool thing about this weekend and why it's such an interesting story is they brought in a veteran engineer to work with Parker. And they brought in Tom Knapp, who really knows his stuff. He was with Team Pelfrey for a number of years. He's worked on Indy cars. He's worked on a lot of different machinery, and you and I talked about it. If Tom and Parker can gel, if they can get that language that you have to have between a driver and an engineer, I think we're going to see them continue to make this platform better and better. And that's the idea, because Jacob Abel, who is the primary driver for Able Motorsports, actually running the F3 weekend, actually in Pittsburgh, but he's planning a full assault on the Indy Pro 2000 Championship next year, and this is what Parker is doing right now. Working on that setup. He and Tom are going to try to fill the books of data for Able Motorsports. Kirkwood on top, 201.758. Rasmus Lint, he goes to P2, your point leader now, coming off some pretty good runs. He goes to P3 as Daniel Frost on only his second lap after being held on pit lane for 5 minutes. Daniel Frost for Exclusive Autosports goes to the top of the charts, coming off a big victory on the oval at Lucas Oil Raceway. The Singapore driver for Exclusive Autosport, the Canadian team, P1 early. 8.5 minutes still to go in this 20-minute session. Let's have a look at your top 13 or your full lineup. Daniel Frost on top by just over a tenth. Kyle Kirkwood second. He's in pit lane. They're going to make some adjustments. Unlike what we saw in USF 2000, where the driver's pretty much running the entire session without making changes to the car in the pits, we've got Kirkwood in. Rasmus Lint has made his run to the pits. Also in pit lane, Stingray Robb, Ian Rodriguez for RP Motorsports, Jacob Loomis in what I've confirmed is the McLaren Papaya Orange on that machine, essentially a privateer effort out of a nice little 24-foot trailer. Moses Smith, a former champion in the Star Mazda Championship, working with Jacob. Philippe Dennis for Fat Boy Racing in the pit lane as well. 6 different drivers, Eric, have made the move to the pits to make some adjustments.
Well, we talked about earlier in the first session of qualifying, you've got your banker lap in. Now that you've got about 7.5 minutes to go, this is where you want to make some minor adjustments and then get your your end of the session flyers in. But you don't want to take too much time.
Yeah, another one of the D-Force drivers just coming in as well. Just saw him peel off coming out of turn 14. The thing I'm always worried about here is your driver's got to go out and get the job done, because at a lap of over 2 minutes, you come back out of the pits, it's 2 minutes to come all the way back around before you restart a time lap. You're thinking 4 minutes to get one lap in, 6 minutes, over 6 minutes to get 2 flying laps in after being in the pits. That was Corey Enders that just came in.
The advantage of that, though, is you have a situation where the timing line using the alternate start-finish at turn 14, your out lap is actually generally shorter by a full straightaway.
That's very true, yeah.
So you can kind of time it out a little bit if you get it just right. And maybe you just made a packer adjustment or a damper adjustment, and your tires are still up to temperature, your out lap is a little bit shorter. So if you time it where you know from pit out at full step to that alternate finish line, if that time is, say, a minute 45, a minute 47, when you get to the timeline, it should be right at the end of the session, and then you get your last minute flyer.
Yeah, I'm trying to see if anybody's putting sticker tires on. That's a possibility too, right? Putting fresh rubber on, and then do you have enough time to get those tires up to temperature, even though they're new? So Daniel Frost goes quicker again. We've got about 6 minutes remaining. He lays down a 201.443. So Frost in the Exclusive Autosport number 68, now 0.3 quicker than Kyle Kirkwood. Rasmus Lint still in the pits. He's not pulled off a pit lane yet, a 201.98. His teammate at Juncos Racing, Stingray Robb, in 4th. Parker Thompson now P5 within 0.7 of a second. He's been into pit lane and back out. Thompson, though, firing things back up again. Lesteshkin. Nikita Lesteshkin again in the number 90 goes to P3. So a 201.907. They're well off, 2 seconds off that track record of 159.8 set by David Malukas. Rasmus Lint still on pit lane. Stingray Robb 4th, or rather 5th. Thompson 6th. Rodriguez 7th. Jacob Loomis in 8th. Philippe Dennis in 9th. Moises de Oliveira 10th. Corey Enders 11th. Antonio Saravalli in 12th. And Charles Finelli in 13th. Here comes Saravalli in the number 11. Is it too late for him to make any adjustments? 4.5 minutes to go. He may get a couple laps back in. This is going to be interesting to cap this off. Who's got the flyer? Parker Thompson to P2. On his out lap after making changes, Parker Thompson goes to a 201.641.
Flat 2/10 shy of Frost time on a 201.4439 to Thompson's 201.6412. So flat out 2/10 off of Frost pace, but Frost laid down a wicked lap.
Parker Thompson out of Red Deer, Alberta, Canada. One of the favorite drivers in the paddock. A lot of people very high on the young Canadian. And again, a lot of race wins in both USF 2000 and Indy Pro 2000. Was a winner last year, again with Exclusive Autosport. Made the move to Able Motorsports in the offseason. Daniel Frost, though, carrying that flag for exclusive. Coming off that victory on the oval Lucas Oil Raceway. Can Frost back it up here? Got the pole position in the win. Remember, Colin Kaminsky with the pole position at Lucas Oil Raceway. He backed it up in USF 2000. Can Daniel Frost do it as well? Good shot there of Nikita Lustishkin. Lustishkin out of turn number 14. He's going to close up here a bit. I think that is Charles Finelli in the number 83. He'll work by the start-finish line here. Indeed, that's the 83 of Finelli. Then it's the 90 of Lustishkin. Frost, Thompson, Kirkwood, Lustishkin, and Lint, top 5. Rob in 6th, Rodriguez 7th, Loomis, Dennis, and De Oliveira rounding out the top 10. 3 minutes to go. Stingray Rob to P2 by 0.05 of a second. Stingray Rob to second. Driver to Payette, Idaho.
Best name in all of motorsports.
You like it, don't you?
Absolutely. It's great.
The story, I've been told the story many times. I'm trying to figure out exactly which part of it's true, if he's fibbing with me a little bit. His parents loved Corvettes, but his grandfather's names were Sterling and Ray, so it kind of comes together. New top time, folks. PT Parker Thompson to the top of the timing charts by 0.3 of a second. 201.124 for Parker Thompson, the number 8 machine.
Regardless if he stays there or not, does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think that he and Tom Knapp have blended. They got the language down. It's all about trust between a driver and an engineer, and that goes both ways. The engineer's got to trust the driver's input. The driver's got to trust what the engineer is saying in terms of what he wants to do to the car. When that works, it's magic. And Parker Thompson just went a 201.124, 0.3 quicker, but we've got time to go still. Just a little under 2 minutes. Thompson, Frost, Rob, Kirkwood, and Lustishkin. Nikita Lustishkin has been looking very good over the last couple of races. Had a good run on the oval as well. One really good race on the road course at Indianapolis. I see Nikita really starting to come into his own here with Exclusive Autosport. They're definitely coming together.
Nikita with a moment off of turn 14, got on the rumble strips and upset the car a little bit. Now it's real easy with the, with a qualifying set, you maybe have your ride height set a little bit lower in that situation, and those gator strips will bite you if you start the high side on them.
Well, they did to Oliver Askew, right? In practice for Indy Lights, dropped the left side of the car off the rumbles into the grass, and around he went just a little bit. Rasmus Lint now back up to 5th. He pushed Lustishkin back down into 6th. Nikita Lustishkin in the number 90. P6. Less than 0.8 separating your top 6 drivers. Kirkwood now to 2nd. Hold on to it, folks. 30 seconds to go in qualifying for Indy Pro 2000. Who's going to take it? Will it be Thompson?
Thompson's got one flyer left, just crossed the start-finish stripe, and Finelli's gone around in turn 5.
Finelli around in turn 5. That's going to slow up one of the D-Force cars, but otherwise Finelli able to continue. Good job for Charles to get it back in gear. We're going to come down to the final 10 seconds. So we're going to see the checkered flag pretty soon at the timing stripe. So this will be it. Final circuit for everyone. Here's Jacob Loomis in that beautiful number 9 machine. I love the way that car pops. Loomis doing a great job here as a privateer. His second weekend here in the Road to Indy.
Must have just gotten through.
He did.
Either that or going to bust off a lap without a time.
You don't want to do that because you'll lose your fast time normally if you do that. Otherwise, this is it. People coming across the line. It's just about 1.5 tenths for Parker Thompson, but Kyle Kirkwood was coming. His last lap of the best, 201.277. Can Kirkwood find a little more? Everybody's still on the racetrack. This is it. There's Kirkwood there coming down through the hurry downs into turn number 8. How good can he roll the outside of the carousel? This is when you're really trying to feed the loud pedal in, waiting for the grip to really take a set back through the kink. Such a hard part of this racetrack, the trust you have to have in your car to be able to really roll that kink. Thompson, Kirkwood, Frost, Rob, and Lynch, still your top 5, all still to come. Philippe Dennis into pit lane. Lustishkin to pit lane as well. He's P8. Dennis just getting him on the final circuit. Stingray Rob goes to 2nd. He'll put Kirkwood down to third, but Kyle's still to come. Parker Thompson still to come. Here comes Kirkwood to the line now. What does he do? Nothing. P3. Daniel Frost still out there. Frost and Thompson, I believe, still on the racetrack. There's the number 8 right there of Parker Thompson. Can he go quicker than a 2:01.1 to pad his gap? He does not. 2:01.6. Is Daniel Frost still on the racetrack? Or are we just not showing him in the pit lane yet? Parker Thompson, fast lap so far. Provisional pole, 2:01.124. Unsure if any more drivers are on the track. We don't see a couple of them into pit lane yet. Loomis was the last guy.
Yep.
Right? Here they come. Yeah, Jacob Loomis was the last guy. So here comes, I think right behind him, that is Loomis and Daniel Frost. So Frost must have snuck through as well. They'll come to Canada Corner. Final 2 drivers looking to try to take the top time away from Parker Thompson. 2:01.124. Thompson, it would be huge for him. It looks to me like, I think that's the 5. That's actually Rodriguez. Loomis doesn't do it. He ends up in 9th. Rodriguez in the 6th spot. Still waiting to see if Daniel Frost is coming across the track. We already got a wrecker up on the turn number 6.
So AMR safety response truck and the medical response car and the wrecker. So possibly maybe have someone off, or it could just simply be a course clearance. So not sure, and that we'll take a look and see if we have anything from our standpoint.
Right there coming out of turn number 7. Eric,
And,
up on the big screen, what do you think about that?
Yeah, that would certainly be.
I don't know if that's a driver off the racetrack at this point. I don't know if anybody's
Well,
involved.
that certainly looks like somebody actually climbing on the tire wall.
Yeah, apparently it's Daniel Frost. Contact coming. Yeah, that's Daniel Frost. Here's a great shot. So Daniel Frost, who was P4, and again, that's that precarious run trying to come out of turn number 7, Eric, where you're rolling so much speed at a 6. Potentially, what, you think dropping a wheel on the outside of the rumbles there and the car going around on, maybe a full 360?
Well, easy enough to do there. You've got a little bit of a gator strip on the inside of the racetrack on the corner entrance. So if you're cutting the apex short, trying to maximize the distance or shorten the distance around the corner, it's really easy to kind of hook a tire there, and that gets the car a little out of shape, and then it pushes wide. You grab a little bit of grass on the driver's left, and it loops around on you. Wouldn't be a surprise.
So there's your top 10 right now. Parker Thompson back on the pole position as he was in St. Petersburg. This will be a smiling Parker Thompson and a very happy Able Motorsports 10. Of course, Tom Knapp coming on as the engineer here this weekend. Those two guys, Knapp and Thompson, getting the job done in qualifying. 2:01.124 for Thompson. A 2:01.188 for Stingray Robb. 2:01.2 for Kyle Kirkwood. That's your top 3. Daniel Frost did not bring out the red flag because he was the final driver coming through, so I have a feeling that he will not lose any laps or any lap times. So Daniel Frost, after the repair of the car, will be P4, currently sitting second in the points. Rasmuth Lynn ends up in P5. He's your point leader. Ian Rodriguez in 6th. Philippe Dennis in 7th. Nikita Lasteshkin in 8th, Jacob Loomis 9th, and Moises De Oliveira rounding out the top 10. This is interesting because Parker Thompson looks like he may have returned to the form that we've seen him before. A couple of outliers in both the road course at Indianapolis and, again, the oval where he's won before. Just didn't have the pace there last race at the Carbonite Classic. But Parker definitely showing the pace here in qualifying for race number 1.
Well, and certainly bringing on some more experience, obviously engineering with this racetrack with a lot of laps with this open formula concept car that Tom Knapp does. It certainly could be helping Parker Thompson out considerably. But with the new cars, getting all dialed in, really what you anticipate. So, Rob, we're going to send you on down for Indy Lights. Qualifying coming up next as well in about 10 to 15 minutes or so from right now. But an interesting qualifying session nonetheless here for Pro 2000.
Yeah, for me, what it does, both of these qualifying sessions sets up for some pretty good races tomorrow. I think with Colin Kaminsky qualifying on the pole for USF 2000, here's a young guy that if he can get a race win, the amount of momentum it's going to give him for the remainder of the season, it may turn him into an actual championship contender. I think he's got the pace to do it. We'll see what he does battling with his teammate, of course. Darren Keen's going to be in there fighting. That's going to be fun. And this one here is going to be really exciting, too. It's a Canadian up front, a couple of Americans in 2nd and 3rd, the Singapore driver in 4th, and the Swede in 5th. So we've definitely got an international field, and the entire road to Indy. But again, as you said, Eric, I'm going to head down. We've got Indy Lights up next.
Thanks, Rob. Rob Howden will join us again later this afternoon when we go racing as well here at Road America. America's National Park of Speed. Back with more qualifying. Indy Lights coming up.
It's a gorgeous South Florida morning here at the Palm Beach International Raceway. The perfect setting to test out the new Cooper Xeon RS3 G1 tires.
Pretty brave move to put these tires on straight up race cars.
The race truck is the perfect scenario for this particular tire.
All day they were great, super predictable on the breakaway.
The tires, they seem like they have a lot of grip. You'll get a lot of use out of the tires.
Hi, I'm Toby Sarry from Cambridge in the United Kingdom, and I'm racing the number 2 BM Pelfrey Indy Lights car. I'm from St Neots, just outside of Cambridge in the United Kingdom. I grew up in a place called Melbourne, which is about 20 minutes away, so it's still fairly local. And yeah, I'm out here racing the Indy Lights. The way I got into racing was just primarily for fun. It happened to be a karting party when I was maybe 6 or 7 years old. So it wasn't anything like put in, follow my father's footsteps at a young age sort of deal, just purely for the love of the sport. In the UK, I do instructing work, so I work for MSV, which run half of the tracks in the UK as an instructor. So if someone wants to learn how to drive, I sit next to them and teach them and try and bring them on. I'd also do some mechanic work for karting teams that I used to race with. You know, I'm still very heavily involved in motorsports outside of my own racing, just purely for the love of the sport. So outside of racing, I hang around with a small group of friends that I have. Obviously racing travels a lot, so having some local friends is difficult, but you know, I've got some very good racing friends locally that I play some pool with, go to the pub occasionally, not too much, being a racing driver, but yeah, so it's a very chilled atmosphere outside of the racing, take your mind away from the serious sports side and just let your hair down a bit. I'm looking forward to Road America again. Obviously we had a very good result last year, so I think going back in a slightly quicker car is going to be a new challenge. But obviously this weekend, being an F1 circuit as well, it's always something that you look forward to, and it's a great facility, and the atmosphere so far is incredible. Follow me on the road to Indy. You can follow me on social media on Instagram at Toby Sarry and at Twitter on Toby Sarry Racing.
Road to Indy 101.
Welcome to another episode of Road to Indy 101. This weekend we're at COTA. We're going to give you a behind-the-scenes look of Indy Lights tech. We're here in the garages at COTA with Indy Lights Technical Director Craig Brooks. Standing in front of the Indy Lights setup pad, today Craig's going to give us a behind-the-scenes tour of what goes on in tech. Craig, why don't you give us a basic overview of what it is that you guys do here?
Well, basically you're standing in front of the tech pad. The cars roll up on here. The black pads you see here will come up after we put what we call pucks on the bottom of the tub. Car rolls up, we get a weight, the scales drop down, then we measure everything off of this flat surface.
What is the total weight for the car and driver for this series?
Depends, it's right around 1,400.
So what are some examples of things that you're looking for that teams might be doing that would be out of the regulations?
Things we check are like wing angles, wing heights, floor heights, what we call deflection, so much weight on the wings, they can only deflect so much, just general things like that.
Right. So Craig, what kind of technology do you guys use here at Tech to manage your process?
We use RevTech technology software, really cool software. All the Indy Lights techs around the pad, we have one in the front, one in the back, one on each side. They all have iPads. Mm-hmm. So we have cut down the communication gap a ton. We don't really even have to talk in here. Everybody sees what everybody else is doing, and as they're putting it in on their iPad, it comes up on my screen.
So it's all about efficiency here at Tech.
Absolutely, yep.
Between you, me, and the viewers, how good are the teams here at the Indy Lights paddock? Do you catch them cheating a lot?
No, not at all. And, when somebody does fail or something like that, it's usually just a mistake. These guys are really professional. They know what they're doing. They know what's at stake. So we really don't have a lot of trouble.
Thanks for this behind-the-scenes tour of Indy Lights Tech, Craig. We'll see you at the next event in Indy.
Yeah, my pleasure. Glad to help.
It's a gorgeous South Florida morning here at the Palm Beach International Raceway. The perfect setting to test out the new Cooper Xeon RS3 G1 tires.
Pretty brave move to put these tires on straight-up race cars.
The race truck is the perfect scenario for this particular tire.
All day they were great, super predictable on the breakaway.
The tires, they seem like they have a lot of grip. You'll get a lot of use out of the tires.
Features a wide range of SA-rated helmets.
Network. Friday in Elkhart Lake, Wisconsin rolls on here on the Advanced Auto Parts IndyCar Radio Network. Thank you so much for joining us. My name's Nick Yeoman, Anders Crone, Jake Query in the booth with me. We've got Jeremy Scott and Rob Howden down on pit lane as the 9 drivers for the Indy Lights Series presented by Cooper Tires heading out on the racetrack as we are going to set the grid for race number 1. This is qualifying for the Indy Lights Series presented by Cooper Tires. 1 practice session already in the books. Rinus VeeKay, the fastest of the 9 drivers, at a minute 54.995. Aaron Telitz back in Indy Lights and was strong as well. He was second quick at a minute 55.160. Robert McGinnis, Lucas Cole, Dalton Kellett, the rest of the top 5, Ryan Norman, Oliver Askew, David Malukas, and Toby Sowery rounds out the top 9 drivers. Anders Krone, it's been a while since we've seen the Indy Lights Series. It was the thrilling Freedom 100 that Oliver Askew won. It's been a while, but it's good to see these drivers and these cars back in action.
Indeed it has there, Nicholas Yeo-Man. It is wonderful to be here at Road America, and I think all of us just loving being here, and actually had a chance to catch up with a couple of the drivers a bit ago, and they're all absolutely in love with this place. Maybe not in love with the fact that it chews tires like a cheese grater, but they love this place, and it's something that is so difficult to put a lap together around this place. And I think now, obviously, it's just one practice session down today and then straight into qualifying, so they really got to put it all together here.
We're going to talk more about the tire allotment this weekend that Cooper has set up for the Indy Lights drivers, because it is certainly a challenge. But Jake Query, you know, you and I had a chance to go out on a golf cart there in the last hour and of course check this massive racetrack out. It's really a cool atmosphere. Lots of campers, lots of race fans out here already this weekend, and it's only Friday. It seems like it's going to be a good weekend here at Road America.
Yeah, totally agree, Nick. And one of the things I think is interesting, and I was talking earlier today with Simon Pagenaud and Will Power about this exact fact, and Anders, you might be able to weigh in on this. I think as the green flag falls here in this qualifying session, one of the things they were interested in is just because over the course of today, this is such a big facility that there could be times where there's open track and it's open track for, you know, whether it be a minute or so before everybody comes back through if it's in a pack. But how how temperature sensitive is this track? Because it's a massive facility, and yet we might see conditions tomorrow that are vastly different than today. Will that play into things?
It most definitely will, but I think as far as the temperature itself is concerned, it's not quite as much affected around here is because when you look at the surface, it's much lighter than what you see at the likes of Indianapolis Motor Speedway, so it doesn't soak up that sun as much as the darker surfaces do, so it doesn't affect it that much. But what I will tell you about this place, what can be so frustrating when you're trying to put these laps together is it's the better part of a 2-minute lap as we have an off now in turn 5. That is one of the Bilardi Auto Racing cars. It's such a big lap, so if you do a mistake like we just saw from that Bilardi Auto Racing car, it's another 2 minutes until you have a chance to start a new lap again. So it's not like a street course like St. Petersburg where every single minute you have a new shot at putting a lap together. So I think that's the most sensitive thing with a place like this is just how critical it is to put the entirety of the lap together, because before you know it, your tires are going to be gone. You only get 1 or 2 laps of peak grip around here. And if you make a mistake on either of those 2 laps, yeah, you're not going to be on the front of the grid, that's for sure.
The advantage for the Indy Lights drivers, this is a half-hour session, so plenty of opportunity to turn those laps. As you're talking about, finding that sweet spot on the Cooper tires, though, makes that a challenge. But when we go qualifying tomorrow in the NTT IndyCar Series, when you've got knockout qualifying in 10 to 15 minutes, you're looking at maybe 3 or 4 laps at the most, and that's maybe without not coming onto pit lane, and all those drivers usually do to put on the alternate red tires. Boy, it seems like that scenario of missing a lap and throwing it away and losing valuable minutes certainly seems to be a key factor.
It 100% is, but you know, even though this is a 30-minute session, it's almost identical to IndyCar in the way that the car only gets quicker and quicker the more fuel you burn off during the course of the session, and so you're always going to go to that last new set of tires right at the end of the session. So even though it is that 30-minute continuous session, you still have to go through the same exact stages as you do in knockout IndyCar qualifying. So still fantastic chance for these drivers to learn here, and again, putting those laps together, because if you've ever gone down and looked at this surface, just how weathered it is here at Road America, it just chews up these tires, and if you try and lean on them for more than 2-3 laps at a time, yeah, you're going to be out of luck.
It was the rookie driver Lucas Cole for Bilardi Auto Racing who missed turn 5 early here in qualifying, as these drivers are getting some heat into those Mazda engines, some heat into those Cooper tires as well. As we continue to roll on, it's a busy day, and we welcome Jeremy Scott, who's down on pit lane. Jeremy, the nice thing, Mother Nature appears to be a race fan, at least for this Friday here in Elkhart Lake.
Yeah, Nick, we're lucky enough to have nice conditions. It's 76 degrees ambient temperature. Track temp here on pit road is 94 degrees. Now, when you get down to turn 12, the lowest part of the track, you may see, a 10-degree variance in the coolness of the track. I'm taking a look at the flags on top of the media center, and they are it's a crosswind across the main straightaway, so it may hamper things a little bit, but not too much, as it's not too much of a breeze.
And Jake Query, a nice day on Friday. We're going to be keeping our eye on the weather forecast throughout the course of the weekend, though, because it does appear like there is at least a chance on Saturday and Sunday that rain could factor into these races.
I think that, look, especially when you look just at the weather patterns over the last month, Nick, throughout the Midwest, you made a good point to me earlier this week when we were talking about it. You said in June you've always got to just kind of consider that this is going to be the case. There is the talk of it perhaps happening towards the latter part of the weekend, and certainly for those that are camping here, you want to make sure that it wouldn't be taking place tonight or tomorrow night, but it throws that curveball in, there's no question about it. So it always makes for an interesting time here, or any race we go to, when you've got to think about the possibility, of course, putting on rain tires. And then Indy Lights, Anders, that's a whole different curveball, because these aren't guys that are used to coming in. Of course, obviously, if they decide to go ahead and midway through the race, they declare it a wet, then everybody would come in and have to make that change. But coming in, making pit stops, putting on 4 new Cooper tires is a different experience for a lot of these drivers.
Yeah, and it's something that the race control, headed up by Tony Cotman, is trying to control somewhat, because some of these teams have, a huge benefit. Andretti Autosport, for example, have a full IndyCar team behind them. So if it got into a scenario where you have changing weather conditions, they would have a distinct advantage over someone compared to, a Bilardi Auto Racing who don't have that same background. So they try and typically red flag the race in that particular scenario if you need to switch from the one tire to the other. But there certainly have been cases where that hasn't been the case. I seem to remember back to 2009 with J.R. Hildebrand and Sebastian Saavedra in the streets of Toronto, when the two of them came into the pits. They were with Andretti Autosport. They made a pit stop some 30 seconds quicker than anyone else, and they went on to absolutely dominate this race. So obviously we're hoping that won't impact things here this weekend, but can certainly be the case, as Rinus VeeKay topped the charts this morning, and here he is yet again, 5/10 up on Robert McGinnis at the moment.
Yeah, just starting now to see some times that are, compared to what we saw in practice. In fact, a lot of guys already starting to go significantly faster. It is Rinus VeeKay at the top of the charts at 1:55.024. Oliver Askew pops to P2, immediately gets bumped by his teammate Robert McGinnis. So the Andretti Autosport drivers starting to find some speed. And Rob Howden, that's good news for our points leader Oliver Askew, who had a rough opening session this morning.
Yeah, definitely some different storylines developing here throughout the day, as we talked about the fact that an issue there with Oliver Askew ended up getting a little on the outside of the rumbles, dropped the left side tires in the grass, and did a 360 to the wall coming out of the final corner in turn number 14. Just got an update on the damage that he did do to the car. It was the upper and lower wishbone in the left rear of the car. They also damaged the pillars a little bit on the rear wing, so they swapped the rear wing out. A pretty easy update for a team like Andretti Autosport. They got the repairs done. But again, it's the mindset of a guy like Oliver Askew. Here's a kid that has come up through the ranks, of course, was able to do so well, won the USF 2000 championship, a good battle in Indy Pro last year. He's a professional for sure, and able to approach it with the mindset to come back out here, clear that from behind him, and get back out. We expect him to take a run here again for the pole position, coming off that great win at the Freedom 100. Drivers with some different approaches, of course, this morning as well. Some of them doing qualifying sims with shorter fuel loads. Other, like Robert McGinnis, as he told us, full fuel load for him as he ran essentially throughout the entire session. We'll see which strategy works as they come out here to qualify for race number 1. A little further down pit lane again to Jeremy Scott.
And Rob, one of the other drivers that had an issue in practice was Toby Sowery in the 2 car. He only ran a handful of laps, nothing over 2 minutes. Well, that's because they had an issue with the camber stud snapping in the car. I talked to Toby after practice. He said right turns were fine, left turns not so much. Right now, Toby is running in 6th place with Dalton Kellett and Ryan Norman ahead of him, but it sounds like that the team does have things situated.
Yeah, no doubt about it was an up and down session for Sowery as he turned just 5 laps. 209.826 was the lap time. That's not even close to what we were seeing from the rest of the field. So for Sowery, for Oliver Askew, it's certainly going to be an interesting qualifying session, and that's what makes these doubleheader weekends so challenging, Anders, is these drivers only on the racetrack for 45 minutes. If something goes wrong on that first practice session, you're immediately behind the 8 ball for the rest of the weekend.
Yeah, it can really, really set you back, and obviously the benefit for Oliver Askew is that he has his teammates in Ryan Norman and Robert McGinnis, who had the chance to collect a lot of data, so he would have been able to take advantage of their setup. But from a driving perspective, yeah, that's very difficult. And then there's always that little bit of kind of irking question mark in the back of your head. is everything fixed properly with the car? Is there anything that can come loose? And certainly in the case of hearing from Jeremy Scott here with Toby Sowery with the camber studs, that's something we saw from Alexander Rossi in the race last year. Remember, he had to come into pit lane when he was in contention for a podium finish. Very, very easy thing to do around Road America, and that's because these rumble strips puts the car into this little frequency where it tends to shake all sorts of studs and bolts loose. So you tend to actually run a lot more Loctite on the car overall around the entire car here at Road America, just to keep it in one piece. So for sure there's going to be that question mark for Oliver Askew.
Is that because of the speed that these guys carry and the stress that they put on these race cars? Because this has to be one of the fastest free-flowing road courses that we go to all season.
It is fast, but it's actually not a speed thing. It simply is a frequency thing with the rumble strips on exit of the corners. In order to carry as much speed as possible, you want to use all of the rumble strips, but the vibration that it puts through it becomes like a harmonic situation where it actually shakes things loose. So very, very crucial here for the teams to nut and bolt everything thoroughly after every single time you're on track.
See a trio of cars making their way down towards Canada Corner. Ryan Norman leads a train of, looks like Dalton Kellett is involved in that train as well, as guys getting up to speed, trying to turn laps. Oliver Askew as well, making his way through the final couple of corners. Everyone chasing Rinus VeeKay at P1 at a minute 55.02. Looks like 8 of the 9 drivers are still on the racetrack. One of those drivers just came to pit lane. That's Aaron Telitz, and Jeremy Scott, you can see him as he's made his way to pit lane.
Yeah, Nick, the number 4 endodontic specialist of Wisconsin, say that 5 times fast, in for 4 tires. He is 7th currently with a 157.6, so the car is on the ground. We'll expect to see him out here shortly.
Yep, good story for Aaron Telitz, Anders, to be back behind the wheel of a car in Indy Lights. This home race weekend. Rice Lake, Wisconsin is his home. Brian Belardi's from Grafton, Wisconsin. So big weekend all around for the Wisconsin boys.
Yeah, it's absolutely massive for them. And I remember back in the early days of Belardi Auto Racing when they had their F2000 team around here, they always had a huge contingency of some 100 people coming out to support that team. So yeah, it is a tremendously big weekend for them. And great to see Aaron Telitz back. And obviously showed a lot of speed this morning, only 1.5 tenths off Rinus VeeKay and setting in P2. So we know he's going to want to try and put it together. But tell you, it's not an easy thing when you have these drivers that have been in the car for the entire season so far to try and jump in and compete with them right away. That can't be an easy feat.
Let's go back to pit lane and Rob Howden.
Yeah, at the very front end of the pit lane right now with Oliver Askew, the driver that I detailed earlier, the incident in turn 14, robbing him of some valuable laps earlier today. His engineer Doug Zister coming in as Oliver's rolled the car down here, the number 28 Index Investalara IL15. Doug will plug in the laptop and try to download some data off the car. No changes thus far. Looking further down, the tires have been set out here as well for Robert McGinnis. Ryan Norman's come in for service as well. His engineer Joe D'Agostino plugs in. Guys, one of those situations, we got a half-an-hour session here. We've got a lot of action down here on pit lane, but nobody really showing any urgency right now. Everybody's being patient. They're taking their time, bolting on the fresh Cooper tires. Not a lot of changes that I can see so far. It looks potentially a front change to Askew, but again, drivers and teams kind of just taking their time.
And Rob, let's talk a little bit about the Cooper tire allotment this weekend, because I know the strategy a little bit different for teams than they're used to seeing on these road course weekends.
Yeah, Nick, obviously at the start of every session and every race day, we kind of try to get an update from the Cooper tire crew and the officials at the Road to Indy in determining which carryover set they're allowed to use. That's really what they do for Cooper tires. You get a certain amount of tires, 4 sets for the whole weekend, but to start off that practice, the idea is not for, have them run fresh tires for the very first kind of practice session in the morning. They're able to take one used set from a race previous and bring that, of course, to this particular event. The difference here for Road America is the fact that Cooper Tires brought a little different tire, different construction, different compound to Road America, so not the same as we had at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, the road course race in early May. They're going to use those tires, Nick, and take those actually to the road course, or the street course rather, in Toronto. That'll be the same rubber. So the carryovers from Indianapolis will be used in Toronto. And what that means to these drivers is all 5 sessions here this weekend, only 4 sets of fresh tires. They'll have to take care of the rubber on, as Anders said from the top of the broadcast, a track which is notoriously tough on tires.
And Anders, this morning during practice, Dave First and I tried to do the math, and that didn't really add up. Four sets of new tires for 5 sessions on track, but it's a wrench thrown in a challenge for these teams, and they're going to have to figure it out.
But I think it's such an important part in the development of these drivers to be able to manage these tires, throughout the entirety of these races. An hour-long race here with 0 pit stops around the cheese grater, here at Road America. So it becomes a very difficult task, but something that I think these drivers will look back on, in a couple of years' time when they're in the NTT IndyCar series and say, wow, that really helped us, because there's certainly some tracks on the IndyCar calendar where tire conservation and fuel save is absolutely crucial.
14 minutes to go in qualifying. It's Rinus VeeKay, Robert McGinnis, Oliver Askew, Ryan Norman, and Dalton Kell at the top 5. Back to pit lane and Jeremy Scott.
Nick, the only changes I'm seeing on pit road so far, other than tires, Lucas Cole in the number 5 Belco trading car, which is 159. They decided to reinforce the brake duct tape on the front ducts because it was taking way too much air in down in Juncos Racing in the 67K line. Insulators with Dalton Kellett, they are putting tires in. Rob, you have more?
Yeah, interesting thing, Jeremy, is normally what we see, guys, and I know Anders can talk about this when I wrap up, but normally we'll see either a front cowl or a rear cowl come off. One of the things about Road America, it's always that balance between downforce. You have low downforce to give you top speed in the long straightaways here, or do you dial the downforce in to have the grip in a high commitment corner like the constant radius carousel. Every cowl I see that I can see, actually the only cowl coming off, just finally, the front cowl for the number 67 of Dalton Kellett. But with Ryan Norman, Robert McGinnis, and Oliver Askew, the only changes, Anders, is aero. They've changed the front wing. They're laying down the back wing. Guys right now starting to pull a little bit of wing out of the cars. Of course, more grip with these new tires. But it just seems to me all I'm seeing right now, aerodynamic changes.
Yeah, and that's a very good observation there, Rob Howden. And something you can get away with, peeling a bit of downforce off the car on these new tires. But certainly wouldn't want to do that for the race, because then you'd be sliding all over the surface, and it wouldn't matter what type of speed you carry down the straights, because you wouldn't be able to do that through the corners. So now is your chance to be aggressive, and we've seen it at some tracks in years past. Long Beach, for example, when Indy Lights used to go there, that would actually be a track where we would trim out quite a bit to benefit us down the straightaway. And again, the tires would allow for that, because you can abuse them for a lap or two. But any more than that in the race, yeah, you're going to be in big trouble. So it's going to be interesting here, and this also changes how you have to manage the car and how you have to drive the car. You have to brake a little bit earlier, be a little bit more gentle with your steering inputs going into the corners to not upset the balance. So when you take that downforce off, it becomes so much more difficult to drive. And perfect case in point for that is obviously the new IndyCar Aero kit, which we've seen so many more people go off track in the last 2 years than I think we had in the last decade combined. So it certainly, every time you take grip away, it becomes a very, very different beast.
Anders, let me ask you, when you have a doubleheader weekend and this particular racetrack, I don't know that this one is as physically demanding as some of the others we might see, but there's elevation changes. It's a long course. I would think that allows for, you've got to stay focused. Your mind can't wander over the course of obviously upward of, close to 2 minutes on a lap. But let's say you don't have a good race one. Which is the bigger challenge? Coming back and getting your race car dialed in and responding physically to what you went through in day one, or the mental aspect of, I've got to put that race behind me because I've got to come back the very next day, get right back in the car, and I can't think about and get caught up in things that didn't go my way.
It's 100% mental, I think. From a physical perspective, to your point, this is one of the least physical tracks on the calendar. Yeah, the carousel, you carry a lot of G's through that, so that'll be a pretty big strain on the neck, but there is a lot of time to rest down these long straightaways here compared to a track like that let's say Toronto, where it's constantly go, go, go. So it's all about that mental one, and I think it's completely dependent on, do you feel like you had the speed, but you got unlucky, you got caught up in someone else's mess, or you made a small mistake, but you were quick enough, then you're going to go in and say, okay, I'm not worried at all. But if you just plain didn't have the speed, then you're going to go in super worried, and that's when it's difficult from a mental perspective.
10 minutes to go in qualifying. Rob Howden, it looks like all the work is done as pit lane is cleared out there in front of you and Jeremy.
Yeah, Nick, you and Anders can discuss this, but let's chalk it up to either confidence or race strategy, practice strategy, qualifying strategy. Last guy to leave the pit lane, the guy that's been the quickest so far here this weekend, Rinus VeeKay. The team holding him here, waiting for the final driver to pull out. That was David Malukas. Once he left, they waited. The final driver to roll out here on fresh Cooper tires, the guy that has been so good, Rinus VeeKay.
He's second in points, 11 points back of Oliver Askew this heading into this doubleheader weekend. Obviously has a race win already this season, driving for Juncos Racing. They know their way around this place. I would imagine Rinus VK's confidence has to be pretty high this weekend.
I think so, and especially given how strong they were here last year with Victor Franzoni sweeping the weekend. So clearly they've got a great car around this place. So he's got to be feeling good about that. But as it pertains to this holding, you know, it can go one of two ways. If there's a red flag, you're going to be kicking yourself and saying we should have sent him earlier. But if it goes green to the end here, yeah, you're absolutely going to be able to take advantage of every single lap and every single corner that gets taken here with these Cooper tires. You lay down sort of that idiosyncrasy and that type of grip in the track. So you want to be the last guy on track to set your lap time. But again, you're pretty exposed if there's a red flag coming out here. So 9 minutes to go, and obviously we're somewhat helped by the fact that there's only 9 cars out there. But if there is a red flag, yeah, that's when you start looking yourself in the mirror and wondering, should we have just gone a little earlier?
Yeah, 9 cars on a 4-mile racetrack. It shouldn't be too hard to find you some space so you can lay down some quick laps. But we saw in practice this morning a couple red flags, one for Lucas Cole running his car out of gas, and then a spin out of turn 14 by our points leader, Oliver Askew, slowed the session. So it is certainly a risk you take. But as for right now, it is clean and green. It's Rinus VK who is at P1. Robert McGinnis is second fastest. Oliver Askew is third. Those are the top 3 in the points, so no surprise to see them 1, 2, and 3 here in qualifying. Ryan Norman trying to shake off losing the Freedom 100 by just a handful of inches. He's got a fast race car, sits in 4th. Aaron Telitz is 5th. Dalton Kellett is 6th. Toby Sowery is 7th. And Lucas Kolb just moments ago jumped over David Malukas to grab the 8th position. Malukas relegated to 9th. How about Ryan Norman? On Tuesday, Anders going to get a chance to test in IndyCar for Andretti Autosport at Mid-Ohio. A great opportunity for him, and certainly it's what all these Indy Lights drivers are looking for.
Yeah, it really is. And, yeah, the chance to drive around this place in the IndyCar must just be absolute madness. I mean, to the thought of driving one of those things around here, it's just fantastic. And for him, it's going to be another chance to sample a completely different car. It's probably going to teach him a lot about some stuff that he can apply to the Indy Lights car. So overall, just a fantastic thing. And obviously showing that the Road to Indy ladder is working, but also that the internal ladder within Andretti Autosport is working. And we've seen that in years past as well, with the majority of their Indy Lights drivers having sampled IndyCar machinery. So I think it's a mutual benefit in that they get some additional miles. And obviously there is that rule in place to where if you test an Indy Lights driver, you're given a little bit more testing mileage from an IndyCar perspective. But then also, as a driver, the chance to drive an IndyCar, I mean, that's incredible. That's what these drivers dream of their entire life. And frankly, it's something that I wish that rule had been in place when I was doing Indy Lights and have that opportunity, because I think not just from an experience perspective, but from the chance of telling your sponsors and showing the people that have believed in you, look, I've driven an IndyCar now, I can do this. I think it carries tremendous value. As Ryan Norman, as we talk about it, look at this, goes P1, 154.79, so 10th and a half quicker than Robert McGinnis, who moves to P2.
Yeah, that's the fastest lap of the weekend so far for Ryan Norman, the driver from Ohio, who pops to P1. Andretti Autosport has the top 2 spots locked down right now. It's Norman and McGinnis who would make up row number 1. Rinus VK is 3rd. Aaron Telitz has found a little bit of speed. He's in 4th. Oliver Askew, our points leader, Jake Query, down in 5th. And again, he's had a tremendous season so far on a hot streak of 5 straight podium finishes. But you get the feeling that if he just slips up on a doubleheader weekend like this, guys like VK and McGinnis are right there in the wings waiting.
The thing about Askew that has been so impressive to me, Nick, is the fact that you talk about those great runs he's had. That doesn't mean that he's necessarily had always great sessions, and his ability to be able to bounce back just when you kind of rule it out, and then all of a sudden, just as I say that, he pops to P1. But, you know, Oliver Askew has kind of like that. Just when you start to think to yourself, well, this might be the anomaly and the outlier here, then all of a sudden he comes back, whether it be at the end of the session or the end of a weekend, and has that consistency that you talk about in terms of being able to be very, very strong. But Oliver Askew right now pops to P1, then Ryan Norman, and then behind him it is Robert McGinnis. So I think the cast of characters that we expected to be 1, 2, 3, but always got to be impressed as well, Nick, by Aaron Telitz. To be able to come in running in sports cars, yes, he has won in different series. In this particular track, it's essentially his home track. But to be able, as Anders had talked about, to just hop back into that machine and be able to come out and put it right there with 4 of his competitors beneath him right now in terms of the speed. Pretty impressive for Aaron Telitz.
Lap times continuing to drop as Rinus VeeKay just laid down a big one, Anders, a minute 54.1. That was about a half a second clear of the field, but Ryan Norman's still chasing VeeKay. Not good enough to grab the pole, but Norman pops back to second quick.
And so everyone here on the next lap or two are going to set their peak lap time. So 4 minutes and 30 seconds to go here. That means everyone's going to get 2, maybe 3 more laps, but I bet these tires are only going to be good for another lap or so. So this is money time right here for the Indy Lights drivers.
Ryan Norman just barreled that car into turn number 1. He's chasing after his teammate Robert McGinnis as they streak underneath the Briggs and Stratton Bridge into turn number 3, all the way down the Moraine Sweep underneath the Sargento Bridge down towards turn number 5, one of the hardest braking zones on this racetrack. Everyone chasing Rinus VeeKay at a minute 54.120. Ryan Norman is second, Oliver Askew is third, Robert McGinnis is fourth, and then Aaron Telitz is fifth. Jake talked about what an opportunity for Telitz to jump behind the wheel of that car. He's done a nice job with Jimmy Vasser and the AIM Vasser-Sullivan group in the sports car series as well.
And, you know, he's embedding himself within the team beyond just the sports car program as well. So he's here for every single IndyCar weekend, sitting on the pit stand, listening in on Sebastian Bourdais. And so he's learning a ton from Bourdais in doing so. And I bet that's going to benefit him. So he's going to want to try and find a bit more speed, though. 9/10 off the pace at the moment is Aaron Telitz. So let's see what he can find here. 3 minutes and 30 seconds to go. What can people do here, and how quickly do these tires peak? That is the big question here. Again, with this long abrasive surface here and just how long this track is, it takes you essentially 3 miles from when you leave pit lane to when you come up to your first flying lap. So it's not an easy thing to judge.
Anders, which area of the racetrack is the one that's where you're going to find your speed? If you've got to shave something off, you've got to make sure this area of the track is your best. It would be where?
I always found around this place in a qualifying situation, it's maximizing the brake zones because they are so tremendous. So you're braking hard into turn 1, 3, 5, 8, you're braking really, really hard into Canada Corner as well. So I think if you have good braking capabilities on the car and you feel like you can really get it decelerated quickly, that'll help you a lot. And then it's just that stability through these quick 90-degree corners. I mean, we're looking at, from our perspective, a shot of turn 1 right now, and it's just so fast. I mean, they're approaching at 170 miles an hour, and then you try and arrest that motion in the car and get through the corners. So yeah, this place is not easy to put a lap together, as Rinus VeeKay still top of the charts, still with that same time of 154.12. So I wonder if the peak of the tires has already hit and no one's going to be able to go quicker here with 2 minutes to go.
And keep in mind, as you mentioned moments ago, VeeKay, one of the last drivers to leave pit lanes. So the last driver that's going to find that peak area of those Cooper tires is going to be VeeKay. So this situation setting up very nicely for Rinus here with just under 2 minutes to go in qualifying. It's VeeKay, Norman, Askew, McGinnis, and Telitz, the top 5. We see Oliver Askew, the points leader, climb the hill. He's already crossed the timing line. His most recent lap, a 159.6. So clearly out of the throttle a little bit, about 5 seconds off the pace. Anders, I would assume, trying to cool those tires and gear it up for one more flying lap.
Yeah, that's exactly what he's doing. So he would have communicated with his crew there. He would have felt the peak of the tires just drop ever so slightly. So they would have told him, just do a bit of a slow down lap and then go for one more flyer. And speaking of flyer, that's exactly what Rinus VeeKay just did, a 154 flat. So 2.5 tenths to the good of Ryan Norman at the moment.
It wasn't significantly faster than his previous lap, but it was enough to extend the gap between he and the rest of the field. Rinus VeeKay at a minute 54.054. And Anders, it looks like that's going to be enough. That's as good as he's going to go, as he's going to bring that Juncos Racing car to pit lane.
Wow, what a sign of strength that is for Rinus VeeKay. Set that fastest lap and then boom, straight into the pits you go. So now it's on everyone else. And Oliver Askew, who's about halfway around the lap here, is probably going to be the only contender here to get the job done, I reckon. So let's see, who else do we have? Lucas Cole went a little quicker, but he will go no higher than 7th, it appears. So it is really just going to come down to Oliver Askew.
Yeah, we'll keep our eye on Oliver Askew. Just made his way through the carousel, setting up for the kink. really have to carry a lot of speed through that portion of the racetrack, and makes his way down that long back straightaway. It's anything but straight as they sweep to the left and the right, setting up for Canada Corner. One of those corners you talked about, Anders, where you got to get hard on the brakes. Nice and smooth, no lock up there for our points leader.
Yeah, and Oliver Askew now just a couple of corners to go until he comes up to the timing line. So coming up to turn 13 here, he's going to clear the line. Let's see what can Askew do. Across the line he goes, no quicker. Does he go for another lap? I think he just crossed the line, but no, he will go into pit lane. So it looks like it's going to be a pole position for Rinus VeeKay, unless, let's see who else is out on track. David Malukas is, Dalton Kellett is.
I think Ryan Norman is too. Ryan Norman just made his way. Dalton Kellett's chasing after him. So Norman may be one of the few drivers that's shown pace so far this weekend. Norman right now racing his way through the carousel, carrying a lot of speed. About 20 to 25 car lengths back is Dalton Kellett. Norman sits in second. Right now on timing and scoring through the kink as Rinus VeeKay already out of his race car. Anders waiting to find out if he'll hold on to this pole position.
Yeah, and it's got to be anxious moments here for Rinus VeeKay. You know, we're just sitting there waiting for the news to hit you. And I think the biggest contenders now are going to come up to the timing line here momentarily. So coming through Canada Corner is Ryan Norman. Can he do anything with Rinus VeeKay? Across the line he goes. No, he goes no quicker.
Yep, Ryan Norman out of the throttle there. Dalton Kellett across the timing line. He looks like he will do no better than fifth. We're waiting for Lucas Cole and Toby Sowery. Cole making his way through the final couple of corners. He'll see the checkered flag. He'll do no better than seventh. And Toby Sowery looks like he may not improve any further than eighth. It's going to be Rinus VeeKay, our pole sitter here for race number 1. And Rob Howden, you are standing by with a victorious driver for Juncos Racing.
Yeah, Nick, Rinus VeeKay was the last driver on the racetrack with the fresh tires, the first driver in after being able to put down the fast lap. Rinus, congratulations. You know in the years you've been in this program, now your third year in the Road to Indy, how important it is to qualify on the pole, to get away from the accidents, what could happen behind you. Give me your thoughts on getting the pole position for race number 1 here at Road America.
Yeah, it's great to have the pole position finally again. So, no, I'm very happy. The team gave me a great car, and I really love this track, especially with this car, with all the horsepower, and just being sideways all the time. It's a lot of fun, and I think for the race, it's a big advantage to start on first place. And yeah, I think if we keep showing this pace, we can go for a very successful weekend.
Let's talk about the first race of the doubleheader. You go racing tomorrow, race number 1. What are your thoughts starting on pole? How do you expect this race is going to roll out?
I think with these cars, it's a little harder to follow in the dirty air. So I think I just have to make a gap in the first lap and try to get out of the push-to-pass zone. And then I think if I do my own thing, it will be my own race. So if the speed stays the same, we can just keep going and hopefully take the win tomorrow.
Congratulations on pole.
Thank you.
Nick Yeoman, a guy we've been watching for the last 3 years. Rinus VeeKay on pole for Juncos Racing.
Yep, it's a pole position, and Anders, it's a bonus point as well to grab that pole position as he'll narrow that margin from Oliver Askew from 11 down to 10 points.
Yep.
All of those points add up at the end of the year.
You take every point you can get, and it's only 2-3 years ago from when we had a tiebreaker, settle the championship. So you want to get every single point, but I think more so than that this is a mental thing right here. I think Rinus definitely felt like during the month of May that he didn't quite have the pace to match the Andretti Autosport team. So this is a huge sign of strength here for Rinus VeeKay and Juncos Racing to show that on outright pace that they can do something with the Andretti Autosport boys. So it's going to be an interesting second half of the season here. And boy, I think Rinus VeeKay is one hungry man here.
Just 0.3 of a second off of a pole position, but Ryan Norman, Jeremy Scott, the fastest of the Andretti Autosport drivers.
Yeah, Nick will start on the front row. Not a bad start after finishing second at the Freedom 100.
Yeah, definitely feel a lot better in the car here. Just my driving's overall better, I think, and the car is mega right now. I had 2 laps that were pretty much going to go for a pole, but one of them made a mistake, and then another one I had a car that didn't realize I was there. But yeah, I mean, we could definitely race from second, and I definitely think we have something for pole for tomorrow.
As you're saying, you are alongside Rinus VeeKay. With your previous experience here at Road America, do you think that you have a shot in the turn 1?
I definitely think so. Also, the long race, these tires seem to fall off a little bit here towards the end of the race, so it's just about managing those, and we'll play it smart and hopefully come out on top tomorrow.
All right, congratulations. Over to Rob.
Thank you, Jeremy. Standing by here with Oliver Askew. Oliver with a little sip of water there. Obviously, a little minor miscue in the morning practice session. You end up looping and getting into the wall on the inside of turn 14. That's going to, of course, change your mindset in that downtime. How did you deal with that? Of course, coming back to P3, I think you're probably pretty happy.
Yeah, first of all, I want to thank the guys here at Andretti Autosport on the 28 car for getting the thing put together. We only had a couple hours there, so damage wasn't too bad, but we got back out there and the car felt solid, so that means a lot to me. And yeah, it was just I'm still learning, so other teams have tested here, and so we're a little bit on the back foot here, but I think we definitely got the most out of that session, and I expect to be stronger tomorrow in Q2. And yeah, I mean this part of the season, it's all about points at the moment, so salvaging what we can, executing when the time's right. So yeah, happy with today so far, aside from that mistake that I made, but yeah, looking forward to tomorrow.
Well done today. Good luck tomorrow.
Thank you.
Oliver Askew.
It's a gorgeous South Florida morning here at the Palm Beach International Raceway. The perfect setting to test out the new Cooper Zeon RS3 G1 tires.
Pretty brave move to put these tires on straight-up race cars.
The race truck is the perfect scenario for this particular tire.
All day they were great, super predictable on the breakaway.
The tires, they seem like they have a lot of grip. You'll get a lot of use out of the tires.